We're supposed to go to the question and answer Q&A, but before we do that, I'd like to give a summary of uh of what you watched or what you took up last time. Okay, there I can summarize this in 4 points. First point, that the fundamental reality of marriage as a sacrament, you know, what exists, the fundamental reality is conjugal love. That's what's important. You know? Meaning to say that without conjugal love, then that thing which we call marriage will not be understandable. Mhm. And conjugal love is something natural, part of human nature. We read that in Genesis, in that famous line that God created man to his image and likeness. To his image and likeness, he made them, made, not created, made. Male and female, he made them. Mm. So it's part of human nature to be male and female, that you don't have human beings walking around. What you have are sexed human beings, either male or female. And those are just the two sexes existing. And that can be shown genetically. You look at the chromosomes. If you're XX, you're female, XY, you're male. Now, part of being sexed is the sexual behavior or the behavioral pattern that follows your sexuality or man's sexuality. So that somebody who is male genetically will be masculine as far as gender is concerned. The proper behavioral psychological package that goes with the male sex is the male gender. And the other side of the fence, the proper psychological and behavioral package that goes with the female is the feminine gender. Now, since there are only two sexes, then there can also be only two gender or psychological behavioral packages that accrue to the sex. Any other part of human nature which doesn't have to haven't don't have to do with sex would be common to both male and female. Only those which have to do with sex, their sexual baggage, will be defined or differentiated for male and female, and those will be precisely masculine and feminine. So all these other things of that the LGBTQ have invented of all manifestations of different kinds of homosexuality, as a matter of fact, no, are human inventions. They're aberrations of what exists in nature. And even if we have to be very understanding with people who suffer this aberration. We cannot water it down by saying it's not an aberration. It is. In the same way that if you don't have 20/20 vision, I'm sorry, I cannot say that you're okay. No, you're not okay. You don't have 20/20 vision, but you can work around that by using glasses or whatever, no? But when it comes to human sexuality, there's no work around for it. Either you're masculine or you're feminine. And if you're neither of those, then it's an abnormality which you have to live with. Because many times people don't make themselves homosexual. It's something that come up with their deficient upbringing. Again, that's another thing that you have to tell parents. No? I mean, there's no watering that down. That if a child acquires gender confusion or gets into gender confusion, that's a failure of upbringing. There's no going around that. But again, there are other factors so that you don't have to beat yourself up because one of your children have gender confusion, but it's part of that, not upbringing, the effect of the environment around, etc., etc. But whatever it is, it's an abnormality Which, here's the good news, psychologists have super studied this, no? That under 20, it's easy to tweak it. It's easy to fix it. Between 20 and 30, it's more difficult, but still easy with the proper help, but just more difficult than under 20. Between 30 and 40, it's difficult. And above 40, most probably impossible. A person above 40 will die with that abnormality already. But even with that abnormality in gender orientation, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to mean that that person leads an immoral life. It will just be more difficult because it's abnormal. It's just like saying if you don't have 20/20 vision, it's not the end of the world for you, but it's going to be more difficult. Definitely, you have to wear glasses, you have to wear contacts. Without them, you can't function normally, but you can still function. The same thing happens with gender confusion or disorientation. It's the scientific name for it is gender dysphoria, right? For those of you who are in that, and anyone with gender dysphoria doesn't automatically have the excuse or the justification to exercise his disoriented gender orientation. He'll still have to be chaste. He'll still have to play according to the rules, but it's going to be more difficult for him. That's the reason why it's not a it's not fair to tell people with this, it's okay, you just live with that. No, they have to be helped because, as I said, under 30, something can still be done. So might as well do it rather than being, because being in a gender disoriented situation is a dead end. Because the only way to be chaste for a person like that is not to exercise his or her sexuality altogether. In other words, to be continent. And it's not easy to be continent if you don't have the gift of celibacy. And that's a gift that God only gives to those people who He needs to give a gift to. And the priests, the nuns, the religious. But for most other people, they don't have that gift. So they have to exercise their sexuality. And if their gender orientation is wrong, then how can they do it? No? Because sometimes you have young people, especially those who come from pious backgrounds with clean backgrounds, and they have this disorientation. They say, well, okay, so I'll just be gay. I won't exercise my sexuality, but I'll be gay. No, uh, then I have to tell these people, yeah, it's easy for you to say that. You're young, but the time will come when you're 40, you're 50, when you're going to look for companionship. And what kind of companionship can you get? If precisely you're oriented towards people of the same sex, and that would be a homosexual relationship, but sooner or later will cannot be just companionship. You just friends, an odd couple. It will get down to sexual activity, which in that case, therefore, will be homosexual activity, which is immoral. Okay. Now, having mentioned that, then let's go to the proper orientation, which is between male and female, between masculine and feminine, there is a natural attraction, natural orientation. God made it that way. Remember when Adam was alone, God said, it's not good for man to be alone. So let's create a mate for him. And then in chapter 2, it will say there, for this reason, a man shall leave mother and father and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And the opposite of that is also true. For this reason, a woman will leave mother and father and cleave to her husband so that the two can constitute a new life, and the two lives will become one. That kind of self giving between a man and a woman, a total self-giving of their entire personality that includes therefore their sexuality and their gender, is what we call conjugal love. So there can be no conjugal love unless the two people are of opposite sexes, because precisely it's a self-giving in their masculinity and femininity. So now that's the fundamental reality. The institution, or the when you abstract that reality, you consider it in its institutional form, meaning to say, regardless of who's exercising it, of the persons involved, then that's what you call marriage. And there's a reason why it has often been said that marriage is the institutional expression of conjugal love. Wrap your head around that concept, no? The institutional expression of conjugal love is what you call marriage. Now, it's that fundamental reality of conjugal love, which is intrinsic to human nature, and had been present there since the first couple, and God created them as a couple precisely, that Jesus Christ at the given moment elevated to the dignity of a sacrament. He made a sacrament out of it. In much the same way as the activity of washing, he made a sacrament out of it to be a symbol of what happens to the soul. When you wash, when you pour water on the one to be baptized, then what happens physically, which is the washing of the body, happens spiritually, which is the washing of the soul. Hmm? Okay. Now, in this particular case, the reality that was used by Jesus Christ to become a symbol of a spiritual reality that will take place is the reality of marriage. And that's something really amazing because by making that natural institution of marriage the visible sign in which he can bring about something spiritual and supernatural, then one starts immediately, one concludes, one thinks, so therefore that spiritual reality that takes place in that sacrament must be something connected with conjugal love. And then you think, yeah, why? What? Well, it's the fulfillment of conjugal love that he's helping. But isn't that a natural institution? Can conjugal love happen even without grace, even without the sacrament? Answer, yeah, it was meant to be. Remember that the state of Adam and Eve before the fall, the fact of being man and woman, and the phenomenon of man and woman coming together, leaving behind their families and raising a home, that's a natural institution. You don't really need a sacrament for that. In the same way, you don't need a sacrament for the function of eating. You don't need a sacrament for the function of resting and recuperating. All of those are natural phenomena. Well, the love between a man and a woman, raising up a family, that also is a natural phenomenon. That there should have been no need to make a sacrament out of that. Now, why did Jesus Christ make a sacrament out of that? Precisely because human nature had fallen. So the natural instinct, so to speak, the natural inclination of man and woman to give themselves to each other in a conjugal relationship, in conjugal love, all the sacrifices that will entail, the strength of character that entails, the generosity in bringing children and raising them up, all of those should have been natural. That's part of paradise, but that was lost because of the fall. So that which should have been natural became quote unquote difficult, not so natural anymore. That which should have come spontaneously to man and woman to fall in love and to be generous with each other, to raise children, etc., after the fall has become tedious, for not to say almost difficult. That's the reason why when you read the Bible, very early on, then you have the phenomenon of infidelity, of marital strife, etc., etc. And that's the reality we have right now. And Jesus Christ, knowing that, even at the time when he was around, remember the time of Jesus Christ, no, the Christian era, that was in the middle of the Roman Empire. What kind of aberrations were going on already as far as conjugal love was concerned? So that was the situation that he wanted to fix. Now, aren't there other conditions in fallen human nature that need fixing too? Oh, definitely. Like what? Well, I don't know. Think of the problem of laziness, of man's inhumanity to man, wars, slavery, etc. All of those things need fixing. But Christ didn't make a sacrament for each one of them. The sacrament for being chaste, the sacrament for being honest, the sacrament for I don't know what, being just. He didn't make those. Hmm? Or although all of those form part and parcel of the struggle to be a good Christian, which will be helped by the other sacraments of baptism, of communion, of penance, etc. But for that very specific aspect of human life, which is conjugal love and the raising up of families, he put the sacrament for it. By the way, he also put another sacrament for that very specific human fact of dying, of getting sick and dying eventually. No? You see? Why did he put the sacrament there? Hmm? He didn't put the sacrament for childbirth. It would be nice, no? But he did put the sacrament for baptism, not only of children, but even of grown up. Your birth to the church, your birth to the Christian community. But many other realities. No? But for death, well, yeah, that's important. That's crucial. You have to die properly. All your life is decided at that moment of dying. That's why it's, you know, sometimes it's a big sacrifice for a priest to go and give anointing of the sick, you know. When people call me, can you come? Where is he? In Medical City? Oh no! When it's Medical City, that's the end of the world as far as the priest is concerned. No, there goes your whole morning. There goes your whole afternoon because to go to Medical City is a pain in the neck, right? But anyway, it has to be done, and the only shall we say, consolation I tell myself when I get into one of those things is, well, here, because there you are, killing yourself to hear confessions and do all the sacraments, help a person struggle. That moment is very crucial. That could make or break all that effort to help a person all his life. If it's not help at the moment of death, then you could lose all the investment, so to speak. No, that's why I also feel bad when this aspect of pastoral work of the action is not given sufficient attention. Many people who die without the help of the last sacrament, and what was all the effort for? No, celebrating mass for them, hearing their confessions, doing them retreats, their whole life is struggling. If at the last moment they'll just be lost because of despair, because of the lack of the sacraments. That's why I keep, I mean, it's good for you to keep this in mind, no, that in that moment of life, when a person is already there, approaching death, the most important thing that you can do is to make sure that that person receives the anointing of the sick, and if possible, confession beforehand, because everything else would be lost if you were not helped in that angle. Okay? Now, going back to what I was saying, if our Lord instituted a sacrament for dying, why did he institute also a sacrament for conjugal love? Simple. Because conjugal love and what it brings about, which is the family, is crucial for human society. Death is crucial for the person, but marriage is crucial for society. Without healthy families, without healthy conjugal love, healthy or generosity in having children and bringing them up, well, the society is doomed. And that's what we see in many parts of the world, even in this blessed country of ours, unfortunately. Unhealthy families, broken families, unhealthy conjugal life, infidelity, etc., etc. All of those should not happen if people are married properly. But you go to the States, for example, the rate of breakup of Catholic marriages and Protestant marriages are the same. Pardon my French, they're equally screwed, so to speak. Uh, once in Southridge. I can never forget this incident. So there was a parents' day. All the parents were there, and the master of ceremonies was a fourth year guy, a typical teenager, right? And he was there being very polite because the parents were around. But at a given moment, from the stage, he used that word, no, without blinking an eye, without apologizing for it, uh, because that's the language that they're used to. Hmm? Which reminds me of another incident. Pardon me, this is a comic respite. In Spain, when there was again a family day in the residence for students in the University of Navarre, and the vice director of the centers was showing a family around. Hmm? And then he said something like this: "Oh, this is new. We just remodeled it. This section. I don't know what it was. I think it was a visitor's room. We extended it, and then he said in Spanish, nos costó un huevo. Hmm? Nos costó. It cost us un huevo, an egg." That's an expression in Spanish. It's like saying it cost us an arm and a leg. But since the Spaniards are more graphic, instead of an arm or a leg, he says an egg. No, the thing, the part that cost them. No, but then he realized he made a boo boo because it was with parents, and he tried to extricate himself from the situation. And since after saying no nos costó un huevo, cost us an egg. And then he said, of the face, as you know, de la cara, claro. So, in other words, trying to extricate himself from the boo boo, he just made it more obvious that, that he had made, because you don't have an egg in the face, right? Okay. Because the equivalent expression is nos costó un ojo de la cara. No? That it cost us an eye of the face, un ojo de la cara, but not un huevo de la cara. No, that was already a mistake. Anyway, that's by way of trying to, shall we say, apologize for my use of that term. But it's like that, no? That in the States, whether Catholic or Protestants, they're they're just in the same boat. How come? Well, it has reached that point of moral degradation, sociological confusion, etc., etc., that it doesn't even matter anymore whether you're Catholic or you're Protestant. Marriage is just as bad. Of course, the marriage among Christians is still better than pagans, no? But between Catholics and Protestants, they're the same. So hopefully in this country we don't reach that point precisely with all these catechesis that you are doing. That people have to understand that it's not enough to have clear ideas of what marriage is, which is what you will give them. Hmm? It's not enough that they're convinced that marriage is supposed to be monogamous and indissoluble. That's a big thing between somebody who knows that and somebody who doesn't know that. Like what? Again, going back to the pagans, no? Take your typical Japanese, no? Who doesn't have the foggiest idea of these things, or may even have a warped idea of the natural law as far as this thing is concerned, no? Or your typical Chinese. Many people say, no, in China, I don't think there's infidelity. I think the marriages are intact. There's no divorce. There's no broken marriage. Well, a broken marriage doesn't have to be that they're apart. It's even worse that they're together and the woman is being enslaved, one among several concubines, because that's what typical in that scenario. You don't believe me? Even here in the Philippines, you consider many of those big taipans, and that's what that's the normal situation. No, there is a wife, definitely. There's the legal one, but there are two, three, four. I know somebody who's a very big name there. I know he has 24. No, 24 because I have met the 24th. and the brother of the 24th, but it's just number 24, no? And this is a really, really big guy, no? In a tycoon. Mm, okay. So that's what happens. Why is that happening? Because we have a fallen nature. In philosophy, you study or we study that everything, every being acts according to his nature. Can't help it. Uh, you can tame a crocodile so that it becomes a nice pet. Oh, I have a pet crocodile. You have a pet crocodile. One of these days, it will bite off your leg, no? Or my brother has a Rottweiler. Now he has several. Uh, but a Rottweiler is a vicious creature by nature. It's not very okay. So one day the Rottweiler, he thought they were playing, but the Rottweiler was already biting his back. So now he has a big scar at his back because the Rottweiler attacked him. No, a Rottweiler is not the German Shepherd. A German Shepherd is intelligent. No, a German Shepherd will not hurt you on purpose. Oh, he can hurt you because he's big. But a Rottweiler is not that sane, so to speak, no? I mean, it's crazy to have a Rottweiler as a pet. Well, okay, he has one, and he paid the price for it, no? And things like that. Now, let's go back to marriage. So, therefore, Jesus Christ, knowing this and knowing how crucial it is for marriage to work, introduced a sacrament, which is called marriage, whereby if you receive the sacrament, then the very fact of that reality, what reality? Conjugal love and the conjugal life becomes the avenue for him to give the grace, not only to make it work, but also to make the human beings work as such. People are really supposed to become better, not only humanly speaking, but supernatural speaking, meaning to say holier in marriage. Hmm? Not just by being martyrs. Martyrdom is a way to sanctity, right? Not just by being martyrs, but by being normal Christians. Why? Because you think about it, marriage, conjugal love, and the upbringing of children is a constant school for polishing the rough edges, for becoming generous and strong and developing all the virtues. Actually, in imitation of Jesus Christ, taking care of his bride, the church. Hmm? The only other similar sacrament that can rival conjugal love in this regard is, of course, the sacrament of orders, because the sacrament of orders is also a matter of quote unquote conjugal love, only it's half. It's only a man giving himself conjugally to the church. There's no counterpart, no? Whereas in marriage, it's a man and a woman giving themselves conjugally to each other. But the point of reference is the way Jesus Christ gave himself to the church. And that's the reason why sometimes, I meet people and they're married properly, but then something goes wrong, infidelity or the development of bad habits, etc., etc. And then they start complaining, I didn't bargain for this. I didn't sign up for this. Yeah, but you signed up. So what? I'm trapped in this situation forever and ever. Well, you can consider it as a trap, but you can also consider it as a school for sanctity. No? But it's one-sided. I'm the only one working. I'm talking with a very nice girl right now, very pretty, very beautiful. But she has always complained about that, no, that I'm the only one working for this marriage right now because the guy is unfaithful. As a matter of fact, has left them and he has gone off with a younger version. but I haven't given up hope yet. That he will wake up one of these days and realize that he has made a very poor decision. I just hope that the family still receives him, and that idea, that I'm the only one working, even if that were true, that only one party is really working to make it work, the mere fact that you got married in church means that all the graces necessary are there to make that work as far as you're concerned. Hmm? Of course, it's very difficult to say that a marriage will work with only one party working, right? But while the person is still there, there's still hope. That's why I'm the last one who will advise a person to sue for nullity or get a declaration of nullity while the other party is still there. It's a different story if one party has left. So what can you do? It's not your choice anymore. No, life must go on. But if the party is still there, you have to find it in your heart to forgive it. Okay. Now, that's point number one. Ang haba nung summary of what marriage is. Point number two is, as we said, that reality of the conjugal union has been elevated to become a sacrament. Fine. Now, the next step is the church to protect that reality has made it enter the juridic structure of the church. In other words, it's not just a reality that happens, it's not just a sacrament that Christ instituted, it's a reality that the juridic, the legal structure of the church has also configured so that, number one, it's defined as far as its characteristics are concerned. Number two, the requirements for it to come about are also defined. That's a way of protecting that reality so that when people get married, they do so responsibly. And then finally, because of that, since it's defined, its characteristics are also defined and therefore enforceable, then three, it can be enforced in the sense that there's a way of showing that a marriage never took place. And that's what we have the declaration of nullity procedure for. So in the church, there's no annulment, there's no divorce. If a marriage really took place validly, there's no power on earth that can break it. The only exception being the case of a valid marriage but not consummated, in which case the Holy Father can can really annul that marriage. It was valid, he makes it null for the sake of the faith, because there's an option for getting married again with a Catholic, etc., etc. But all of those are a different story. But if a marriage really took place, there's no power on earth that could break it. So what can happen is, you've heard of this a lot, the so-called declaration of nullity. Unfortunately, people are very careless, and instead of saying declaration of nullity, declaration of nullity, three words, they reduce it to annulment. Those are two different things. There's no annulment in church because annulment is the same as divorce. You're annulling something which is there. You don't annul something which is not there. No? What the declaration of nullity does is it declares that it was never there. But isn't that a hocus pocus? No. Why? Precisely because marriage, the natural institution, marriage, the sacrament, has become juridically structured. What do you mean to say when you say juridically structured? I was explained in the lecture. No, when you take a reality and then put the norms, the legal norms, the juridic manifestations of it, such that if those norms are not followed, if those external characteristics are not there, then a court can declare it's not there. Hmm? But a court must do it. The competent authority must do it. No one can unilaterally just declare, I don't think my marriage was valid because of this, and that. Well, okay, those may be true, but only the competent authority can declare that. That's why it's so important to have those juridic structures. Now, this is the third point. That was the second point. The third point is, how does it go about doing that? By making use of the juridic structure and looking at it. And in that class, I told you that the juridic structure of marriage can be summarized as follows: that marriage juridically stands on three legs. The leg of capacity, meaning to say marriage cannot be valid if the spouses are not both capable of getting married. Even if they did so, there were witnesses, but if they were incapable, then that would be invalid from the very beginning. And what causes invalidity? Well, the law has defined certain characteristics which, if they're not there, or if they're there, renders a person incapable of getting married properly. No, those are the so-called impediments which you went through. Now, the second leg, which is the most important one, actually, is the consent, because consent is what brings about marriage. You can have all the capacity, but if you don't agree to get married to each other, there's no marriage. But on the other hand, it may happen that two people may agree to get married to each other, even if one or both of them are incapable. They can do it out of ignorance or whatever, but if a posteriori that marriage doesn't work precisely because one of them doesn't have what it takes to get married properly, then there's a way out for them by showing that the marriage was faulty from the very beginning because of an impediment. Okay? And then we further in that class dissected consent. What will make a marriage or a consent valid, or what can invalidate it? No, since consent is an act of the will, the intellect and the will, then if something intervenes to make the intellect malfunction or to make the will malfunction, then you can show that it malfunctioned enough such that there was no valid consent. And that's the majority of the cases of declarations of nullity of marriage, that there was a defect in the consent. And finally, the third leg, which is very obvious, is what we call the canonical form. That when you do something with juridic relevance, it must have some external form, verifiable by the senses, verifiable by witnesses. So that's why the canonical form of marriage is number two, with the presence of both spouses, either personally or what do you call this, by proxy. Two, the presence of a qualified witness who is the one who will ask them for the consent and will take note of it on the part of the church. And this normally is a priest or a bishop or somebody delegated by them. Even a deacon can do it. And then finally, third, two more witnesses. So the spouses, the qualified witness who is the priest, plus two more witnesses. And if they express their consent under those, then that is the canonical form. Now, what happens? If despite all the effort doing all of this, a marriage breaks apart irreparably, because if it can be repaired, then what the church should do is help them repair it, help them fix it, no? But if it's irreparably broken, and as far as praxis is concerned, irreparably broken means the breakdown of conjugal life, that they're already apart for a minimum number of years. And praxis says 4 or 5 years. Anything shorter than that, and a application for declaration of nullity will be turned down. Try. Rather, the church will say, will give the help to make it work. But if after 5 years of breakdown, not 5 years after marriage, but 5 years of breakdown, and still it doesn't work, then we'll start. The church will have to admit that despite all the help, it's still not working. It must be because it was defective to begin with, and then a process of nullity is started. Hmm? Okay, that's it. That's my summary. Hmm? One more thing before we go to the open forum. With all of that, then you realize that marriage is a serious thing, that it must be prepared properly. There was a time when life was sane, society was healthy, the church was healthy, we need to say, that since marriage is a natural institution, that people growing up were naturally formed to understand what marriage is and to develop the virtues necessary to make it work, right? What kind of marriage formation or pre-Cana seminar did your parents go through? Or perhaps even some of you did not go through. Why? Uh, Because it was a healthy society, but we're not like that anymore. No, and that's the reason why nowadays the church requires a pre-Cana or a pre-marriage seminar. Hmm? Now, the requirements for a pre-Cana seminar existing out there is really, really, really minimal. Hmm? The Holy See came out with an outline for a pre-Cana seminar that will take 20 months to cover. Hmm? Who does that? Hmm? And then you see, no, who does that, right? I will have given birth already. No, so, so it only takes 9 months to make a baby. So this is 20 months, no? So that's the problem, precisely. No? That's the reason why AIMFAM, Asian Institute for Marriage and Family, that's the outfit that I'm involved in. We have a pre-Cana seminar that lasts 2 full days, Saturday and Sunday, morning and afternoon, via Zoom, where we have all the modules where we cover at least the most fundamental requirements, and then offer a post-Cana that goes monthly for another 20 months to cover up all those other things of the syllabus provided by the Holy See. Hmm? That way, you give people a fighting chance to make it work. Because nowadays, really, it's amazing, no? People get married, you have to advise your children, especially your daughters, not to even bother with a guy who's less than 25 years old in the courtship stage. And for getting married, 28 years old. But since it takes at least 3 years of courtship to get married properly, so less than 25, it's a waste of time. Mm. Because Filipinos, by and large, are not mature at that age. Girls, maybe, but not the boys, because they're not brought up properly. Again, by and large, there are exceptions. Most probably the exceptions are here in this class. But by and large, a 25-year-old male in the Philippines or under is still playing. You know? I mean, you can count on him for anything. And if they entertain a guy like that, then okay, they just might fall in love, quote unquote, emotionally. And if something happens, then they'll get married. And I'm not saying that that's doomed because after all, no, he may be immature at 25, but he will mature at 30. But why do that, no? And run the risk of date somebody who's mature and can get married within 3 years. There are many girls. I ask them, "What do you think is the right age to to start dating?" And then the girl will tell me, or rather, how long do you think will it take to make up your mind regarding a guy? And then very fast they will say, "Oh, maybe 8 years, something like that." 8 years. Why? because actually they already have a guy they're dating and they're only 18. Of course, they're calculating, no, I don't want to get married until I'm 25 or 26. So it didn't answer my question. My question was, how long should it take to get to know a person to decide to marry that person? Not how long will it take you to make up your mind about this person you're dating right now. Because what should have happened was, knowing that it takes 2 years, 3 years if you're slow. But if you're bright and mature, 1 year you can make up your mind. But okay, sabihin mo na 2 or 3 years, then you count backwards. Then you say that you shouldn't get into that situation if you're a girl until you're 25. And if you're a guy until you're 28, because most guys don't want to get married under 30. Hmm? So that's the real procedure, no? Start with the end and work backwards. Not jump into anything at the moment and then work forward and make requirements there which are ridiculous. You can't be dating the same guy for 8 years. You have to tell your daughter this. You can't date the same guy for 8 years and assure that he's not going to get into your pants. Again, pardon the my French, because it's really like that. Biology, physiology doesn't work that way. Hmm? Male physiology doesn't work that way. And if it does, then I have to doubt the virility of that guy. No, why are you so slow with that kind of an intimacy, with that kind of a relationship? Okay, so it's not healthy to date that long. Or to go steady rather. The thing is, the terms change. Now, before in my time, to date is just to go out, but now to date means to do more than that. It's equivalent to what in my time we call going steady. Mm. It's not healthy to go steady for more than 2 or 3 years. Mm. Those, so advise them that, and then they will go through a courtship, a steady relationship, which is healthy. I always tell people marriage is such an important thing that it must be built wholly from the ground up. Here, you're just dating, and if you're already committing sin, that's not building it wholly from the ground up. No, you shouldn't be sinning while dating. Hmm? There was a time when I would require, I only marry people who are virgins. Hmm? Just for me to be able to stay out of it, no, because that's in Opus Dei, that's not our thing to marry people. That's for the parish. But okay, you can't avoid it. Sometimes somebody who practically grew up with you, they dated in front of you, then you have to, or a relative, no, then you marry them. I just came from Davao last week to marry off the first nephew that I married off, actually. So, and they're okay. That I can attest. I didn't ask them, but I knew how it went. Okay? That it would be nice for people to get married in the state of grace and in the state of virginity. Hmm? But that will only happen if they're formed properly and help every step of the way. The environment is just so confused, no? And doesn't happen. Okay? Any questions?
There
I
are
don't think
questions,
there are any
Father.
questions.
The
Wait, chat 30.
questions, Father,
Your
in
signal is poor. Okay. 5 and 6 have to go. Okay, that's it. There are
Father,
no
questions.
there are no questions.
Father, there are questions po.
Just a minute, just a minute. My speaker went to sleep. Okay?
Father, can you uh,
Yes, Cheryl.
there are questions in the chat box.
Yeah,
There are
it's not.
shall I
Yung
read?
Oh, jump.
scroll down
I'm
po,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
scroll
sorry.
up mo.
I was not scrolling. Take your attendance, post attendance. Yes, add na lang and submit. Father, here we are. If a couple has engaged in premarital sex, then get married, but there's no consummation after marriage, is it therefore considered not yet ratified since there's no consummation after marriage? So you're mixing up terms here. Ratified means valid, that it meets all the laws regarding a valid marriage, no? So if they got married properly, their witnesses, all the requirements, then it's ratified. But it's not consummated. That
Fascinating.
particular case, yes. Which reminds me, I was I was in a wedding before. It was even the bishop who married his driver to the girlfriend. No? Um, Actually, not girlfriend. They were living together, and but he fixed it precisely by marrying them. And so at the end of the ceremony, so the bishop says, "You may now kiss the bride." You know what the driver said? In all simplicity, finish na po. And then I was just thinking, yeah, and much more. Finish na po. They had
Father,
been living together. Okay, in that case, what counts is what happens after marriage. So juridically, that's not consummated. Hmm? Even it was consummated beforehand. Hmm?
when does it become relevant, Father? Like, because I think that it states that um a marriage that is ratified and consummated, for a marriage that is ratified and consummated, no human authority can break it off, right?
Yeah, yes,
So,
yes.
for example, if it's just ratified and not consummated, so what does that mean?
That the Pope can break it.
Ah, okay.
Mm, mm,
The Pope can break it if it's not
yes.
consummated.
It's what you call the Petrine privilege. But
Oh,
not just like that. There must be a reason for it. The superato. So that's a very special process that takes place in Rome. Hmm?
mm, okay.
Okay. That was what Henry VIII was trying to do.
Mm,
Okay. Next, for a declaration of nullity based on defective consent, for example, psychological problem, the problem has to be pre-existing before marriage. What if, for example, the psychological problem develops years after marriage? Say, spouse becomes insane and is therefore no longer able to fulfill the responsibilities of marriage. Could this be a ground for declaration of nullity? The answer to that is no. Hmm? Because the declaration of nullity, the object of it is a declaration of the nullity of the coming about of the marriage, not its posterior development. No, that's the reason why, if you notice, what are the commitments, the vows? For
richer,
richer, for poorer, in
yes.
sickness, in health, for better or for worse, till death do us part. Because people can really get sick, people can get worse, people can go insane, but you have to stick. Hmm? That's a marriage. That's precisely what marriage means. That you're taking the other person, warts and all, at the moment. What if the words are not yet visible? Well, they will appear later, but that's included in the thing.
So,
That's why I
Father,
told you, marriage is a serious thing, very serious thing.
I have
No,
another question,
no
po.
wonder you're all looking serious now.
Father, I have
Okay.
another question in relation
Yes.
to, for
Yes, Sharon.
example, po, Father, a spouse becomes abusive, physically abusive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
All of those are like it won't affect the constitution. What will happen there is all of those are grounds for separation, but with the bond remaining. you cannot question the bond because the bond came about properly.
I
It's just that
understand that. Yeah, but
now
what would be
another story, Cheryl, is another matter is that if those phenomena that just comes to the surface years after are indicative of their existence, perhaps in a shall we say a germinal form at the moment of marriage,
Mhm.
and it was just waiting for the right time. In other words, they were really there. Well, that's a ground for nullity. Mm.
Okay. Further question, additional question. What
Yes.
would be the responsibilities of a woman? Let's say they separated because of that, but the marriage, the bond is still, of course, intact.
Mm,
What would be the responsibilities of a wife towards the husband who is basically ill in the mind because he's
mm,
abusive? He's so.
mm.
What would be the responsibility of the
Eh,
wife
eh,
or the
the
spouse?
responsibility to take care of a sick spouse. No,
Mhm.
not to, they're separated already, so obviously they're not living together. Now, how much proximity can be entertained that will be helpful and not damaging to the innocent spouse, precisely who separated because of that abuse? Well, that's a case to case basis, no? And by the way, this is very important because most people are not aware of this, that a separation is not something that one can just do unilaterally. It's not proper for spouses to separate. Now, if there's risk to life and limb and soul, then the innocent spouse can separate unilaterally, but has the obligation within 6 months or within a year to apply for a writ of separation from the authority. Because the only proper arrangement for a married couple is to be together. Anything else is improper. And if it happens, it will only be because it's tolerated, permission is given for the good of souls. But one cannot take that upon himself or herself. He has to go to the proper authority, and the proper authority is the bishop. The parish priest cannot give that. It's called the writ of separation.
Separation.
Further question.
Yes.
Do both parties have to be present for the rite of separation to take place? Because my cousin, binubugbog siya. Binubugbog
Mm-hmm.
siya ng asawa, Chinese, no? So she fled, no? And she did not say where she went. She fled
Mm-hmm.
with the son or the child, and
Mm-hmm.
they just hid.
Mm-hmm.
They they
Okay.
just hid. That's it, no?
Yeah.
So, and
No,
I
no,
don't
the
even.
the other party doesn't have to be there. Because I say
Ah, okay.
in a case where an innocent party has unilaterally fled or left, oh, it stands to reason that the other party is not going to be cooperative. So the
Yeah.
innocent party can go to the authority and the authority can grant that writ.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. Hmm?
Father Angeli has a question here. Is it not an impediment when someone marries a man who left the priesthood? Maybe the question should be, can this couple be married in church?
Yeah. The thing there is as follows, as one of the questions in the exam shows. Once a priest, always a priest. It will not change. However, what can change is, or what can happen is, precisely because a priest has malfunctioned to a point that is not recognizable anymore as a priest, so to speak. And what the church can do is remove the rights and obligations that accrue to that personality or to that character of a person as a priest. Now, the thing of celibacy is an obligation that accrues to the priesthood. Proof of that is one can be a priest and not be celibate. He's still a priest, but he's committing sin, he's behaving irresponsibly, etc., etc. Now, what happens when a priest gets laicized? That's the technical term for it. He's reduced to the lay state. He does not become a layman, strictly speaking, still a priest, but he's reduced to the state of a layman, meaning to say, therefore, the rights and responsibilities of a priest is taken off him. Now, one of those responsibilities is to live celibacy. That also goes. Hmm? Although those are two separate canonical steps. One can be removed, the ministry can be removed, but the duty of celibacy remains. So he has to apply for that also. Although nowadays, those two things normally are granted together, but they're two different things. Mm. They're just granted together. That the person is advised also apply for the dispensation from celibacy. Because celibacy, that vow to celibacy, is taken at the moment of ordination, different from the matter and form of ordination. No, so one can become a priest, but that won't happen unless in that same set of ceremonies, he also takes the vow of celibacy. So therefore, their, shall we say, dispensation from either one will also be separate. Separate, rather distinct, although they can be done simultaneously, but they're distinct from each other. Okay? So when this dispensation from celibacy is also granted, then a person can get married. But he's still a priest. And that's the reason why that's a very difficult situation. I've actually read accounts of women married to priests who gave a testimony like that. No, they're not exactly happy because, according to the woman, it's very difficult to compete with the priesthood, the character of the priesthood. And I would really say, if it's really the vocation of a person to be a priest, then he was, shall we say, designed by God to be that. And part of that is celibacy. So he will not normally not make the ideal spouse. Hmm? In other words, a priest, even if lay size, pardon my French again, is not going to make a good lover. Hmm? That's the reason why I pity women who get involved with priests. They don't know what they're getting into. Of course, they're not going to admit it just like that, right? They'll have to glorify what they have done and come up with all sorts of excuses, etc. But by and large, of course, there are exceptions. I know some. Right now, I know of one who comes to my mind. And again, by the grace of God, when somebody is humble enough, you acknowledge the mistake and you try to make up for it. And this priest was able to come up with quite a good family. And the children came out well, and I know them, and they're great. But that's a case of God making a straight line out of crooked segments. It was a misstep, but by the mercy of God, He fixed it. The interesting question there is, would it have been better had that not happened? Meaning to say, if that priest had remained faithful to his vocation and this woman would have met some other person, I have no doubt it would have been better. But plan B was still good. That's how great God is. But that there are not very many plan Bs as good as that.
Father, I have another question, but it's a bit unrelated to this, but it has to do with children of couples out of wedlock.
Wait a
So
minute, wait a minute. Is it more an impact? Okay, there's somebody, Anjali, here saying, I had a question before Cheryl's. That's right, it's
I
there.
read it already, Father.
Is it not an impediment when someone marries a man who, yeah, okay, so we're done. We're done
Yeah,
with that.
yeah,
Okay. Now
yeah.
let's get back to you, Cheryl.
Yeah, Father, for example, how do we as catechists respond to a question like that, like this? If a person has engaged in sex outside of wedlock and it produced a child,
Yes.
then obviously the child is a beloved child of God, but how do we respond to this? I don't know how to phrase my question. Father, so parang the child is good, but the means by which the child was conceived is
Mm.
obviously wrong, right?
Yeah,
So
sinful, yes.
how do we explain it to people na God can bring something good out of a sin?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Because God is God, no?
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's like this. So therefore it's the same. Whether I bring a soul to this world within wedlock or out of wedlock, it's not the same. Hmm? Only God knows, although again, you can also see that it would have been better had it been done better or the right way. But since you did that, God foresaw that also, so He has provided for it. But right now, it's going to cost you more. Hmm? I mean, more effort to bring up a love child, so to speak, is more difficult than to assure the proper upbringing of a child that's born within wedlock. There's no doubt about that. But is it an impossibility? Very far from it, no? Because God is good. That's precisely what makes it so bad. Because God is so good, then how come you're doing that thing, no? Against His will, diba? It should really make a person feel guilty. God is so good. Look how He has blessed this. And so do penance for it and move it forward to make sure that none of His children gets into something like that or explains it to people, no? That's how you move forward a situation like that where a person commits a sin, but thanks to the mercy of God and his or her own humility to recover, and things turned out right. But still, that sin was committed. That cries for restitution. And what restitution can you do? Apostolate, move it forward. Without using yourself as an example, if you don't want to embarrass yourself. But sometimes you can even do that. Hmm? But to prevent other people from making the same mistake. Hmm? Okay? But I insist that a child born out of wedlock is as much a child of God as somebody born within wedlock, as far as God is concerned. It's society and the things that will happen afterwards that won't treat them the same, even if it's not a matter of attitude, but just the simple matter of even just finances. No, it would have been more difficult. It would be more difficult to do something like that than if things had been done properly and they didn't have a child saddling them, quote unquote, from day one of their married life. Hmm? It's easier to survive financially, just man and wife, and normally a child should come 2 years after. That's not from day one. You have that burden, that financial burden. Hmm? Okay.
Other question po.
Okay. Yes, Alma.
Regarding disparity of cult po,
Mm-hmm.
is it possible po ba that the bishop will really not allow, for example, the other party doesn't want to convert to Christianity?
No, the other party doesn't have to want to convert. The condition is not that. The condition is that the Catholic Party assures that that marriage will not jeopardize his or her own faith, number one. And number two, that the children will be brought up in the Catholic way. And the third requirement is that the non Catholic or the non baptized party knows this and is not objecting to it. Note that the non-Catholic or the non-baptized party doesn't have to take the initiative to make that happen. What's necessary is a negative thing, that he is not objecting to it.
Oh, okay po. Thank
So
you.
all the burden is in the
Is
baptized
in
party.
the baptized party. Yes po.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
Opo. Thank you po.
Okay. And by the way, the in that's the case of disparity of cult, but there's
Yes.
such a thing also as a mixed marriage, where both are baptized but one is not Catholic. So the same requirements apply. Hmm? But in the case of the mixed marriage, if they don't get the permission, they just do it anyway, they get married, it won't be invalid. It's not an impediment. Unlike in the case of disparity of cult, if they get married anyway, I don't know how they did that, an absent-minded parish priest or a delinquent parish priest marries them, that will be invalid. That can be declared null in the future.
If they didn't get the permission from the bishop. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Okay po. Okay.
So if there's dispensation, Father, then that cannot be made into an excuse anymore, parang because they got this dispensation.
Yeah. There's no impediment.
Okay.
That was actually what happened with Henry VIII. Got married to his cousin, but they were dispensed.
Mm.
Then when it wasn't working anymore because he was interested with Anne Boleyn, I don't know why, because if you look at the picture of Anne Boleyn, she was pretty ugly. Uh, really, I can't understand that whole story, no? Because Henry VIII was good looking. Hmm. But Anne Boleyn, no. Anyway,
He might
hmm.
be good
But,
in other stuff, Father.
Oh yeah, definitely,
but
definitely.
eventually, he also got rid of Anne Boleyn because he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
not involved with
He
Yeah.
other
had
women.
So
married
I
bad.
think he
he
had
married
8
many
women, no?
women.
Okay, so that's the tragedy of mice and men. So there's a thing, di ba? That's the title of a novel of mice and men. There's no such thing of mice and women, by the way. Only men can be equated to mice, unfortunately.
It's
Okay,
time back, Father, right? It's time back.
okay. So that's it. Any more questions? Okay. Oh, it's 8:49. We should really be it's time to wind up. Okay, what do you call this? If you have any more things that crop up in this regard, I really would expect you after looking through that class to have more, shall we say, a better grasp of not just of marriage, but a better grasp of the reasons, the grounds for declaration of nullity, so that when you hear these things in what do you call this in your work in the family apostolate, you're sensitive to it, no? Because we have to help people in problematic or irregular situations. And Cubao has one of the best equipped marriage, shall we say, ministry, so that you have trained pre-judicial marriage counselors, no? And I suppose even you yourselves, if you get interested in with this thing, you know, as soon as Father Arby comes back, you pray that he finishes his thesis by the first quarter of next year, because we have a we have a bunch of plans, and one of them is again to have another round, another class for prejudicial marriage counselors, no? And the next step of that even is to form advocates, so that we'll have advocates who don't have to be canon lawyers, definitely who don't need to be priests. Hmm? And I guess some of you will do very well with that job because you're interested. Okay, so let's pray. Um, Glory be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit.
Was in the beginning, is now, and never shall be, world without end. Amen.
In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, goodbye.
Good night, Father. Thank
Good
you.
night,
Classmates. Good night, everyone.
good night,
Night.
classmates.
Good
Night.
night.
Good night for the Tunaga. Hello,
Nasaan na
Tunaga.
nasaan sabi ko ngayon eh.
Alma, the checking, when would it be? You'll be the one na lang.
Kami po ni Cheryl. We will still have to get the answer key from Father po. Hintayin pa po natin.
Oo. Sige.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
po. Night po.
Right.